Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
Warning: the Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised.
May 9th, 2018.
And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, author of Liberalism is a Mental Disorder, Trump's War, and God, Faith, and Reason, Michael Savage.
A time to kill, a time to heal, a time to lie.
In all of us, time to kill, a time to heal. Never forget that. Never, ever forget that. Man is capable of many things. It's all a matter of when and how. Welcome to the Savage Nation, second part. To those of you who listened to the first part, I don't know if you know what I'm going to do in this hour because I'm not sure where I'm going to go. I was going to do, does Viagra affect your veins with the lowering of blood pressure from an expert on the subject. It's a short piece, but it's an interesting one since so many men take erectile dysfunction drugs. It's like a joke. I'm not going to tell you a joke because you ask yourself, I wonder if it's harmful. I was going to do that. Then somehow I got into religion and the morning prayer of Orthodox religious Jewish people and what it means and wrapping themselves with those weird phylacteries. What does that mean? And a rabbi called, Rabbi Jeff, who I had not heard from for 10 years, and he said, you may remember me 10 years ago. Well, Jeff, thanks for calling earlier, and I hope to hear from you in 10 more years, which will mean I'm still here, and you're still here, and I'm still on the radio, because I intend to be the last man standing, by the way. Yes, after all the others have fallen by the wayside, I will still be here. It's all simple. I won't be number one, I'll be the only one. That's my goal. Why? Only because, that's all. Now, I don't want to be facetious nor comedic in the political arena, but at some point, comedy is always good. Comedy is king. Before we get back to the comedy of life, the great divine comedy of life at that, I want to tell you something that I once said years ago because we're talking about religion and many of you don't believe, you scoff at it. I understand that. The religion itself is scoffable. When you see that Cardinal Dolan, the highest man in the Catholic Church in New York, attends a mockery of the Catholic religion and lends the Pope's hat to one of the so-called performers. If that is not idolatry, I'd like to know what is. What was he doing there? Why does he have to mingle with the lowest caste of American society? What, because they have money and power, it means they're the highest level? I've met people in undershirts who could hardly speak English who had more dignity than most of the people at the Met Gala. But I want to give you a little something that you can think about. We say that we're all, we're Americans, built upon the Judeo-Christian concept, which is true. Why do we say Judeo-Christian? Because Christianity derives from Judaism. Whether you want to believe it or not doesn't matter. It's a fact that everyone knows. And what do Jewish people and Christian people believe? They believe in one God. Now, what did the Greek people believe in? They believe they are God. They believed in idolatry. They believed in worshiping themselves. So what we have in America today is a schizophrenia, a split, where we're going from the Judeo-Christian belief of a God, a supreme being, to people who think they are God. They worship themselves on Instagram. They show their bodies. They entertain. They perform. And they think the whole world is them. That's all just a little fact. There's no furtherance to that particular discussion. Just remember that before we go further. And I can jump cut from that to the news of the day, which I may do, may not do. I mean, I find it very interesting that Trump gets 3 hostages released from Korea, and the media spins it into something negative. I couldn't believe the news. They made it sound like the American hostages were held by Donald Trump. To show you how perverted most people in the media are, no matter what the man does, they twist it into something negative. Down there today, there's a CIA nominee, Gina Haspel, an all-around wonderful, great woman, by what I read, asked by this nobody, Kamala Harris, who's trying to make a name for herself, is waterboarding moral? What kind of stupid question is that outside of the facts of the time and the time in which the waterboarding was done? You all know that's a stupid question. That's like saying, did you stop beating your wife? How do you answer a question like that? So this is the best that Democrats can do, is waterboarding moral. No, it's immoral, but it's stop the terrorist attack, schmuck. How's that for an answer? Now take a walk. Go back to working for Willie Brown. Go get him coffee, because you're never going to be anything more than this. Stupid. I'm sick of stupid people pretending they're so smart. I'm sick of it. The lowest class of humanity seems to present themselves like they're the most brilliant people on the earth. Is waterboarding immoral? You hear who's asking the question? Kamala Harris. CIA nominee Gina Haspel said, how about the things you've done in your life? How many of them were immoral, Kamala? That's all. Just answer yes or no. Have you ever done anything immoral, Kamala Harris? Yes or no? You know, I don't understand Republicans. They can't do opposition research and look into the backgrounds of these people. They just did it on Schneiderman. How many months have I been saying that Republicans have to hire investigators to look into the backgrounds of their enemies, the most vocal of their enemies, and bring them down? They just did. Wait until you see what's coming with the media. You wait and see. You wait and see. I can guarantee you, as I sit here, that you're going to see private lives exposed of some of these people in the media. The louder they are, the louder they're going to fall. The ones who sit on high horses and put down Trump, wait till you see the revelations about these people in the media that will come out over the next days and months. You're going to be shocked. I won't be shocked. Now, let's get down to the real important stuff. Does Viagra affect the veins? Because many of you take male enhancement drugs. I understand women take them too now. I don't know what for. So this is what a doctor I know, a brilliant cardiologist and a vein specialist, told me. I'm going to read it now. Because I said, does Viagra in lowering the blood pressure harm the veins in some way? Because some people are worried about that, as you would say. It's affecting it something, right? He wrote, the veins, unlike the arteries, are not easily, if at all, influenced by changes in the blood pressure. The pressure that exists in our arteries, generated by the forceful squeeze of our heart muscle and influenced by the tone or state of relaxation of the arteries themselves, is dissipated as the blood travels through smaller and smaller arteries and eventually through the capillaries. When the blood emerges from the capillaries into our veins, there is very little pressure left, about 5 mm of mercury. That's very low pressure. He says venous pressure is influenced by posture, state of hydration, exercise, and by some intrinsic neurovascular reflexes that influence venous tone. But one-way flow valves, listen to how brilliant, I'm getting at something, but one-way flow valves exist in all of our veins, and these valves, when functioning normally, isolate each segment of vein from the influence of nearby segments, making the whole venous system subject to variable pressures. Now, let's pause right there. I want you to think about this, about creationism, about the grand design, the engineering that went into making us. Listen to this. One-way flow valves exist in all of our veins, and these valves, when functioning normally, isolate each segment of vein from the influence of nearby segments. You understand how brilliant that is? Did God do it? Did evolution do it? Do you ever think about evolution? How do these things happen? What we're made of? The right side of the heart, which is pumping venous blood into the lungs through the pulmonary circulation, also can influence venous pressure. Theoretically, Viagra, which can lower pulmonary artery pressure, could secondarily lower venous pressure. Nitroglycerin can dilate veins, thus lowering pressure too, and there are other drugs with this ability. But he adds, but our veins are by design able to stretch to a degree. And he explains it in more, I won't go into more detail, there's no point to it. And he says the genetic tendencies of venous valve failure point to collagen as a place to direct further study, and that in turn suggests that nutrition and the chemical milieu could be important. I hope this was helpful. Bottom line, not sure and very difficult to study because of all the variables. Dr. E. Now, what does that have to do with the price of eggs? What does it have to do with anything we're talking about? Well, everything and nothing. I remember when I was a kid, I think it was in Queens College, and I took a course in anatomy. And I took home a box of bones. You know, you had to take home the bones and study the names of the bones. So I took home a bird in bones, you know. And I used to sit in my room and look at the bone of a bird, and I saw that the bones were designed, they were very light. Why were they very light? You ever notice that the bone of a bird, whether it be a chicken or other bird that you may have looked at, the bones are hollowed out. They're not solid bones like that of a mammal. How does it happen that evolution or God or the grand designer designed the bone of a bird to be made with a matrix of hollow elements in it so that it's lighter. How? You ask yourself. I used to wonder at it. And then I would put the bones of the bird's wing together, and I would compare it to a mammal, a man's hand. And I said, look at that. It's very similar. Look how it's so concisely similar that a bird, a dog, a monkey, a man, if you stretch out the bird's arm, you see similar bone structures in the bird, in the man, in the monkey, and the dog. Just it's bent a different way, and there's different strengths of various bones in that arm or that wing. And I used to wonder about what did it really all mean. I still don't have the answer what it all means. All I can do is wonder and think about it. And it comes back to what I do every day on the radio. I am going through a metamorphosis, as you must know. To take a chance as I'm taking today and talking about God and talking about religion and talking about prayer is very daring when you think about it, because the average person could easily turn the show off because it's too challenging in some ways, and it's not a place that you turn to for any discussion of this nature. Is that correct or incorrect? Do you want to hear about this, or would you rather hear about the news of the day? I myself don't think my job is to just report on the news of the day and take stupid questions like I'm a genius, when all I'm doing is reading something on the internet. Well, what does it take to do that? And then quote a Bible or this. I don't want to do that anymore. I'm not going to do it anymore. So I'm emerging, and I'm going through a metamorphosis on the radio. Where it exactly leads, I don't know. I got to tell you this like from the heart. I got to go back to my trip to Washington 2 weeks ago when President Trump invited me to see him and Vice President Pence. And then I saw Speaker McCarthy, each for 30 minutes. And then I was in the congressional dining room and I met some people. Things happened. I said to myself, this was not by accident. This was by design. This didn't happen by chance. I may think it happened by chance, but I don't believe it happened by chance. And I said to myself, I'm in the dugout. They're warming me up. All I could think of is that I'm in the dugout right now. Or what do you call it out there in the field when their pitcher is throwing out in the outfield there when they're warming up? It's not in the dugout. What is that? They're just warming the pitcher up out there, right? In the outfield when he's pitching. I feel I'm being warmed up for something that's coming downstream, and I don't know what it is. I'll be honest with you. I don't know what it is, but I'm prepared. I'm ready, willing, and able to put the uniform on and go to war in another way for this nation. So I know that I'm here for something more than this, even though this unto itself is in a phrase, a Hebrew phrase, Dayenu, it's enough for me. Dayenu, that's enough. God gave me a lot. If this is it, if this is all it is, so be it. It's enough for me. But if there's more, so be it. Then that's what God wants from me. But I don't believe that this road has come to an end. I don't think this road has come to a cul-de-sac. I don't think this road has come to an exit sign. Something is happening on a higher level that I can even perceive, and I'm being drawn to another place, which is why I did a show like this today. It's because I feel I have not been faithful enough to God on this show in recent times. And I have to take a quick break before I say something that embarrasses me.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel. May 9th, 2018.
Now, how could anyone write something like this unless they were in touch with a higher power? Tell me. Compare it to a rap star rubbing his crotch with blinging out of his nose. One is from heaven, one is from hell, in my estimation. I guess that offends some people. Go report me, see if I care. I'll take Mozart's Requiem. You can have the crotch rubber. Should stripper's lawyer be sanctioned and disbarred? You betcha. Do you think lawyers like that dirtbag working for the dirty stripper should be able to come up with a story like this about $500,000 sent to Trump's lawyer Cohen? I mean, that's a lawyer's job, is to smear somebody in the press with NBC News running wild and free and naked with the story, and the rest of the fake news media trotting along with them? How in the world can this country survive when dirtbag lawyers are allowed to get up there and be given credence by the left-wing press? Then there's another story tied to this that I was going to do, because they're going to go from the divine to the momentary. President Donald Trump suggested Wednesday that he might revoke White House credentials for some journalists because of the dramatic leftward tilt in television news coverage about him. and they show how twisted they are. Well, Matt Drudge, the internet publisher behind the Drudge Report website, posted a very rare personal tweet Wednesday morning to warn about what might follow from the White House. And Matt Drudge said, "I fear the future result of Trump's crusade on fake news will be licensing of all reporters," Drudge wrote, noting that Democrats already floated this in the Senate pre-Trump. Well, he's right. And Drudge said the mop-up on this issue was going to be excruciating. Now, this is a very important story because Trump may have stepped into something that he will regret, which is revoking the White House credentials for some journalists. Because the next step for that is licensing reporters. Now, you may say, yeah, license them. Well, what does that actually mean? A government person is going to license a reporter? You can't have that. Because today's government won't be tomorrow's government. And while today's government may not license the liars that we know are around the clock disseminating fake news, let's say a Democrat wins in a couple of years. What, then they're not going to license people like me because they don't like me? Then we lose the First Amendment. So no, we cannot revoke White House credentials. There are ways to deal with them, though, Mr. Trump, which is just shut their mouths. Create some protocols for these loudmouth bums. The ones who had nothing to say during the years Obama was stealing our country from us, suddenly they found their voice. The littlest chick from Journalism 101, from 10th grade journalism school, screams out after the announcement on Iran, she screams out a big mouth a question, like she's as important as he is. Just make it no. No, you can't scream out questions at a press hearing, or you will be thrown out and your credentials will be revoked. That's a little different.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282.
Yes, it's me and I'm in love again. Had no love and saying you know when. You know I love you. Yes, I do. And I'm saving all my love.
The Roman Empire was a very primitive empire. Did you know the Roman Empire, like ours, did not educate, did not explain itself to its multitudes of citizens, many of whom didn't even speak the language? Did you know the Roman Empire, before it collapsed, did not invite the cooperation of the citizens in its decisions? Did you know the Roman Empire was in many ways run by adventurers who were there only for power? From the days of Marius and Sulla, they didn't really care about public opinion. They thought that the average person was a moron. Did you know that the spirit of citizenship in Rome died of starvation because the people were no longer important to the rulers? And there was no will for the Roman Empire to survive, and so it came to an end. So there are some parallels to the fall of Rome and the fall of the West. We know that. And then along came Donald Trump, who was trying to reinvigorate a faith in the Western world, the opposite of what you are being told by the fake newsers. He's the opposite of everything you're being told. In many ways, I would compare him to, who was it I compared him to? Almost saved the West from the onslaught of the Muslims. Does anyone know who I'm talking about? He came along, Constantine. In many ways, Trump is almost like Constantine. He's been compared to some, but no one's ever compared him to Constantine. Now, I know many of you say, come on, Savage, that's a little bit of a stretch. And those of you who believe in God and are left-wing Jesuits like Jerry Brown say it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of God. Yet they take the money from the rich men, not from the poor. So it's easy to say it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God, then. But the people who say that usually depend upon the rich men to run their churches and their governments. So how does that work? There's always some problem in life that you have to figure out. And at a certain point, you can't go any further with it. You say, I don't want to even think about it. I do what I have to do. So then you drink 2 bottles of wine at night, then you have whiskey, and then you beat up women. If you're like Eric Schneiderman, according to the stories. We don't know if he actually did it. I mean, we can't believe he actually did a thing like that. After all, he was Attorney General. He wouldn't do a thing like that. Would a top cop ever do that to women? No. No way. No, he wouldn't do a thing like that. He was such an eloquent arguer for women's rights. He was such a desirable man on the circuit of the snowflake women who believed in him. They all lined up to be with Eric Schneiderman because he was for the Me Too movement. Little did they know that he was using them as a chorus line. These are just some of the casual observations. Now, here's a crazy story that I really think goes to the whole problem of our times. It was from the Washington Post yesterday, Ruth Marcus. Ladies' lingerie. It was a lame, outmoded joke, the sort of thing you say in a crowded elevator to alleviate the discomfort of being jammed among strangers, an artifact of the days of fancy department stores with operators announcing the floor stops. So a guy was in an elevator with a lot of people at a conference in, don't you know, San Francisco. And all he said was, it was in, of course, the sickest city on earth, San Francisco, at the annual meeting of the International Studies Association. And a professor of political theory at King's College London and a recipient of ICE's Distinguished Scholar Award is in the elevator, and someone calls out to ask for floor requests. And this distinguished professor says ladies' lingerie. What happens? Some low-life degenerate, a professor of women's studies and gender studies, which is a fake field, by the way. Women's and gender studies is created specifically to bring down the universities, in my estimation. So someone in the elevator from so-called women's and gender studies is in the college, from a nothing college, and she takes offense. And she lodges a complaint against the man who says ladies' lingerie. And everyone laughed in the elevator. And it was a joke. Just a joke. So she gets offended. The woman who was offended said, I wonder if we should have told them that it's no longer acceptable to make these jokes. I wonder if we should have told them that it's no longer acceptable to make these kind of statements when women are in the elevator. And she goes on with her high horse. As a survivor of sexual harassment in the academy, I'm quite shaken by this incident. So they then inform the male professor of the complaint filed by this little feminazi. And then she wants a written complaint. And he says, I certainly had no desire to insult women and to make you feel uncomfortable. And the woman, he says, may have interpreted his remark out of context. He says, I am strongly opposed to the exploitation, coercion, or humiliation of women. But that wasn't enough for the woman. She wants him thrown out. She wants him thrown out because his remarks were offensive and inappropriate. And an even more serious violation imaginable is not possible. How dare you, says the man running the organization, to reach out to the professor and term her complaint frivolous, and so forth and so on. So she called his elevator joke offensive. He called her complaint frivolous. He won't apologize. And this is the world we're now living in. In other words, in Nazi Germany, let's put it another way. In Nazi Germany, the children were told to report parents who were not sufficiently supportive of the government at the time, the Nazi government. Are you telling me there are no parallels between what I am reading to you in this story? You're telling me there's no parallels to Nazism or fascism? And what some are doing in the name of women or gay or this or that they're offended by anything that might, in the smallest possible way, be termed offensive, and they're willing to destroy a person's life because they might be offended in their super paranoid, hypervigilant state of paranoia? Everything that's said seems to be directed at them. Now, I wrote a book years ago called The Enemy Within. Wow, was that ever prescient? The Enemy Within. Another book I wrote was Liberalism is a Mental Disorder. Wow, does that answer a lot of questions? You know, for years I would say, when you can't figure something out, plug in the formula. People would scratch their heads and say, why would they do a thing like that? One thing or another. And say, well, plug in the formula, liberalism is a mental disorder. And I also said to you many times that most extreme liberals are on medication. How many times have I told you that? They're extremely high users of psychoactive drugs, tranquilizers, antidepressants. It doesn't mean everyone who uses them is nuts. Don't get me wrong. Drugs have their place in our society. But there's an inordinately large overuse of these drugs, I used to say to you, amongst these super liberals. Now, then you see the Schneiderman story. And she said he was drinking 2 bottles of wine a night, then Xanax, and then hard whiskey in bed. Okay. And And what? What do you draw from that? Whatever you want to draw from it. So there we are. It's just a number of random thoughts today. I'm not trying to cohesively bring you to any particular place. I'm trying to elucidate for you the insanity of our times. When you have real problems in the world, real suffering in the world, real dying and pain in the world, all the thousands of children dying in back wards of hospitals from leukemia and from other forms of cancer, not a word from these hypersensitive feminists. When thousands of young Christian and Yazidi girls were being raped around the clock by the Muslim fanatics in ISIS, all these hypersensitive feminists had nothing to say about the young girls who were raped around the clock by armies of degenerates in ISIS. But if someone says something in an elevator, oh, there they are, Jenny on the spot. There she is, offended and ready to roll. That's the real problem, not the girls being raped by the Muslims. Not the gays being thrown off the roof by the Iranians. No, the real problem is a man saying ladies' lingerie in an elevator. That's the real context of our times. A man's life should be destroyed for that. I hear the elephants cry at night as I hear them being shot and their elephant families cry out in pain. The elephant families are more social than most American families are. They bury their dead. They grieve for their dead. And we do nothing for it. And I reach out and try to get some gigantic person in the Senate to help me, and many of you morons go on my Twitter feed and say that I've sold out for talking to Lindsey Graham. This shows you how stupid you are. How stupid the audiences are today. I find someone on the other side who's more liberal than you may like, who was impressed enough to want to work with me, invites me to Africa with him and Bono and others to try and save these magnificent creatures. And guess what on Twitter? They're calling me names. I've sold out for talking to Lindsey Graham. This is called stupidity. This is called people who don't know the first thing about the real world. This is called defamation of character. And this is what you have to deal with if you're in the public eye, as I am. You have to put up with it. You have options, which is shut down your Twitter account, shut down Facebook, don't take any comments on the website, do your radio show, and if you don't like what someone's saying, hang up on them. You can't listen to everybody in the world. I mean, you can start listening to everybody, you go crazy. Do they really know what they're talking about? If they make comments like that? When the time is so short to save these magnificent creatures from the vermin in China and elsewhere who want ivory on their little bourgeois apartment. They want a little ivory carved. I'd make it a death sentence. You buy ivory, I'll put you in jail for 20 years. It's like the end buyer. Don't talk to me about the poachers. Talk to me about the buyers of the ivory. You trade in ivory, death sentence. You buy ivory, 20 years in jail. How's that? Does that work for you? You want to stop things? Then stop things. You want to stop drugs in America? Don't do it in a piecemeal way. Kill the drug dealers. That's all. Trump said it once. He never said it again. Don't think it might not happen in this country, because we're at a tipping point in this country of addiction where we can't come back from it. I don't see how we come back from it. Trump again on the drug thing, just to talk about that for a minute. There was a prescription turn-in day the other day. Tons and tons of oxy and other dangerous drugs were turned in around the country. In every city, in every state of the land, it was done by the Trump administration to stop the drug epidemic. Did he get credit for that from these vermin, these lowlifes, these stupid people in the media, these idiots? No. No. So he's doing some great things. He's battling on many fronts. And he's being undermined by a degenerate stripper and a moronic lawyer who should be constrained, and a verminous media that has no sense of what their purpose is in this society. They think it's just to get Donald Trump. You want to constrain people? Start with Jeff Zucker of CNN. Bring him before Congress. Question his motives, that he lets his puppets and marionettes on CNN do what they do every day. Distorting and twisting, not with fake news, but outright propaganda around the clock. A country cannot survive this. How did the introduction to the enemy within go? Those of you who bought that book years ago in 2006, who did I quote? Cicero, Roman orator, 42 BC. A nation can survive its fools, Jeff Zucker, and even the ambitious, but it cannot survive treason from within, Jeff Zucker. An enemy at the gates is less formidable, Jeff, for he is known and carries his banner openly. But the traitor moves amongst those within the gate freely, his sly whispers rustling through all the alleys, heard in the very halls of government itself. Jeff, you see, the traitor appears not a traitor, Jeff and Wolf. The traitor speaks in accents familiar to his victims, and he wears their face in their arguments. He appeals to the baseness that lies deep in the hearts of all men, Wolf. He rots the soul of a nation, Jeff. He works secretly and unknown in the night, Wolf, to undermine the pillars of the city, Jeff. He infects the body politic, Wolf, so that it can no longer resist. Jeff and Wolf, a murderer is less to fear. This is the Savage Nation. Be here or be nowhere.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
Hey, big news for you. In the last 2 weeks, Simply Safe won Editor's Choice Awards. Did you know from CNET Magazine, PC Magazine, and The Wirecutter, there are 3 respected product testers, all of them. And what they did was they put Simply Safe through a battery of tests. They compared it to other home security products, and Simply Safe won every time. I've been telling you about Simply Safe for a while now. In my opinion, it's the best home security system, hands down. They now protect over 2 million Americans. You've got to try them. Now, in your home, you'll find the sensors are very tiny. You won't even notice them. Easy to use. You can control this from your phone. But here's the most important reason to try it. It's not a gadget. It's comprehensive protection for all your windows, your doors, your entire home. 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. You get professional alarm monitoring there around the clock, and it's only $15 a month. No contracts. No one else is doing it like this. They're the best. Learn more about how Simply Safe can help protect your home. Just go to simplysafesavage.com. Write it down. That's simplysafesavage.com. Now, here's another story that just came out. Stormy's lawyer, if you want to call him a lawyer, has the wrong Michael Cohen in one of his transactions, yet it didn't stop the press from taking the lies that he disseminated to them as truths. Michael Avenatti's document dump shows alleged questionable financial transfer involving Michael Cohen, but according to the Israeli paper Haaretz, there's a glaring error at least one of the transactions. And that is a transfer from a bank account in Kenya belonging to Nathaniel Cohen and Stav Hayun, Haaretz reports. Nathaniel Cohen does not know Michael Cohen, but he does have a brother named Michael Cohen. So how can a pornography actress's, if you want to call her that, lawyer get away with a thing like this without being censored, number one, not being taken seriously by the news media, number two, and be pulled forward for disbarment hearings, number three? Have you ever seen a case like this where a lawyer, a mad lawyer like this, so desperate for attention and with so many friends in the mainstream degenerate media that he doesn't stop trying to bring down a duly elected president and steal the election from all of us who elected Donald Trump? How can this go on? How can a nation survive this? So when I see that Trump floats decredentialing media, he's got it half right. He's got to decredential lawyers. What we so desperately need in this country more than anything in the world is tort reform. It's far more important than tort reform. I say leave the hookers alone because they do much less harm than do the vermin with law degrees. We need tort reform. We need the American Bar Association brought before the Senate and made to explain how they let the lowest class of humanity get away with things that a criminal couldn't get away with. Agree or disagree? Tort reform or tort reform?
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
Warning: the Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show. The Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, author of Liberalism is a Mental Disorder, Trump's War, and God, Faith, and Reason, Michael Savage.
Well, we're back on the Savage Nation. What are we really talking about right now? Someone I know sends me a story right now at a college that she's at, that a male was found in the woman's bathroom recording women in the stalls, and they're looking for him. And I said, sad and sickening is what I said. Sad and sickening. More than ever today, walking around in a bubble, all of us. People walk into traffic, they don't even know they were hit by a car. Then they call a car racist or sexist that hit them. They fall down an elevator shaft and they blame the elevator. But living in crazy times, it's very hard to retain your sanity. So people, in times like these, revert to traditions. I know the news stories, Iran and this one and volcanic gases, Iran mocking Trump. Trump said reporters should be licensed by the government. I mean, that was a big story. I was going to ask you, should the stripper's lawyer be sanctioned and disbarred? Of course he should. Of course that dirtbag should be sanctioned and disbarred, making claims like that. That's a lawyer? North Korea releases prisoners. How will media spin this? I already saw the spin. They made it the reverse of what was unbelievable. But, you know, if I do this every day and I take my fine mind, my evolved brain, my evolved soul, my evolved spirit, and I devolve my spirit and soul and mind to this level of news, I will lose everything. And I'm too far into the game to want to lose everything. So therefore, I'm going to talk about other subjects for a while because I don't want to do it anymore. I've had enough of it. It's enough to destroy a man's heart and mind to read this stuff. You go on every website, it's the same garbage. One attacking the other, or one this, one. It's enough. It's crazy. I used to spend all my days in a medical library, UC Med Center Library, reading research articles. I felt like I was in another world, a purer world, a more logical world, a cleaner world. I'm not complaining about the media because God gave me this. This is my field. This is my reign. These are my cattle. This is my reward. I see a headline. Cardinal Dolan loaned Rihanna the Pope hat. Christian fury at Met Gala's blasphemous Catholic theme. And yet, they all wanted to be there. Mitt Romney had to be there. Governor had to be there. Around the worst people on the planet. Met Gala. What's the Met Gala? A place for degenerates to show off expensive clothing. And to top it off, Cardinal Dolan, the highest Catholic in New York, loans one of the lowlives a hat that the Pope wore for a parade. It was bad enough years ago when the Brooklyn Museum, remember that one, that horrible thing that they did? Put a crucifix in a jar of urine? How I railed against that, as did Cardinal Dolan. Now he's lending a Pope's hat to this? We're living in really fallen times, mocking religion. You don't have to be religious to not mock the religious people. They are the remnant of reality on this planet, in case you don't know it. You look back in your own family. Let's say you're the coolest person on the block. Good looking, you work out, you got all this, all that. You're not 2 generations away from a religious person, which means it's still in your DNA. What's amazing to me, well, that's a separate story. I don't even want to talk about what's amazing to me about religion. Is that who wears crosses, for example. You see these movies like I watched for 30 hours last week. I was just obsessed with it. Narcos. All the murderers, all the Mexican, all the Colombian killers, all had crosses on them. As they're executing children, they have crosses dangling from their head. You have to ask yourself what that's about. I have faith in what? What do they have faith in if they're killing children? Is the object of religion to make you a kinder person? You know, what is the whole point of religion is what you have to ask yourself. That's really what I'm getting at. Because I've asked this question 1,000 times to myself, and I've come up with the answer, which is that unless religion gives you new powers or enables you to have more power, it's worthless to you. If religion makes you weaker, then what good is the religion? So let's say you go into a house of worship and you come out feeling dirty and dispirited and you're no good. That's not a good religion. That's a bad religion. You're not supposed to go in and come out feeling weak. To me, a religion should lift up your spirits and give you more strength. If I were running a sermon on a Sunday or a Saturday, wherever it was, even if it was a tele-evangelical thing, which I've thought about doing a lot of time, many times, just a weekend prayer service across the religions, I would make sure people left feeling spirited, not dispirited, or else I wouldn't do it. Why would you go in a church to come out feeling beaten up? Why would you go into a synagogue coming out feeling like, ugh, no good? You're supposed to come out feeling happy. That's what religion is supposed to do for you. I know it for a fact. Again, I'll get sidetracked by telling you how I know that. And maybe that's something I should do, but maybe I shouldn't do it right now. I thought North Korea releases Americans. Iran does this. Alaska does that. Baked Alaska is made this way. This is what you want to listen to. I want to give you something that you can take home. And it may not even be ideas. It may just be a feeling. We're all in our little bubble. Snapchat, Instagram, YouTube, half naked, half dressed, half alive, half dead, showing our private parts, making them public. And then we wake up and we see an attorney general was a deviant of the worst kind, as close to psychosis as you can imagine, if the stories of these women are to be believed. And we don't know what to make of it. Now everyone's going, oh, I'm shocked. Governor Cuomo, oh, he's shocked, stunned. De Blasio was horrified over the Schneiderman thing. Cuomo, revelations were shocking, disturbing. Been going on in New York State for years. They paid out tens of millions of dollars for sexual harassment up there in New York State. Are you joking? Now, I know from the inside something that no one knows, but I'll tell it to you without divulging the source, which is that Schneiderman allegedly knew for 3 or 4 months this was coming. He just didn't know the day. I mean, this didn't happen overnight. It hit us overnight. But he knew it was coming. I mean, this took a long time to put together. So they got rid of him. So yesterday we talked about who did it. And you couldn't guess anyone. It could have been Mr. Giuliani and his connections. It could be the Trump people who finally decided to fight back. They got investigators to do what should have been done a long time ago. But I'd like to see them do it now to the media. I want to see them put the same people that they did on this guy Schneiderman on everyone at CNN, MSNBC, and all the networks. That's what I want to see. You know, he who lives in the glass house and all that stuff. So we're talking about this craziness of the time we're living in, the times we're living in. And then you ask yourself, how can people still believe in God and religion in a time like this? And my answer is, now is the time to really believe in God, because there's nothing else to believe in. There's nothing else to hold on to. What are you going to hold on to here? Another, this, another that. Who are you going to believe? A politician? A talk show host? What are you going to believe? Who are you going to believe? What do you hold on to? You try to hold on to eternal values. You try to hold on to eternal truths. You wake up Tuesday morning and you see that in New York, they had a degenerate art show at the Metropolitan that every degenerate in America wants to go to. They think it's a big thing to go there, the Met Gala. So they run a defamation against the Catholic religion. And of all things, Cardinal Dolan, the highest Catholic in New York, lends them the Pope's hat to march around, some dirtbag march around on the runway there. You tell me that these are not times that test man's soul? People don't know which way to turn. The church is in ruin. Nobody knows which way to turn. And if you live in a big city, you probably see men in black clothing, religious Jews, and they go by, you ignore them. It's like, okay, there they are, but you don't know what they do. What are they, crazy, living in another world? Well, they do live in another world. And what is that world that they live in? Why do they live in that world? Why so many of them are so intelligent? Highly intelligent, highly creative, highly advanced, and yet they choose to live in another world, another dimension. They don't have televisions in their house. Most of them don't even have radios. Many of them listen to this show only, none others. I'm telling you the way it is. Because occasionally I reference God, I reference faith and reason. And you ask yourself, what do they believe in? They're not Jews the way you know a Jew. They're not a Schneiderman kind of Jewish person. They're not a Woody Allen kind of Jewish person. They're not a Harvey Weinstein kind of Jewish person. These are called pious people. So what do they believe in? Well, every morning they get up and they make a prayer to God. They thank him for not making them a woman. I don't know if you know that. Don't tell that to the radical femmes because they're liable to burn the prayer books. The first thing an Orthodox religious Jew says is, thank you, God, for not making me a woman. And they don't do it to mock women. This is the thing you don't understand. They do it so the man has compassion for his wife and his daughters. Do you understand that? If you're stupid, you'll see it the wrong way. You'll misinterpret it if your mind is closed and small. It's a way of saying, God, thank you for not making a woman because the woman suffers in a way I don't suffer. Do I have to spell it out for you and turn it into a burlesque? One of the prayers that the religious Jewish man says in the morning, if you will diligently obey my commandments, which I enjoin upon you, to love the Lord your God and to serve him with all your heart and all your soul, I will give rain for your land at the proper time, the early rain and the late rain, and you will gather in your grain, your wine and your oil. And I will give grass in your fields for your cattle, and you will eat and be sated. Take care, listen to this, Schneiderman, take care lest your heart be lured away, and you turn astray, Eric, and worship alien gods, Eric, and bow down to them, Eric, for then the Lord's wrath will flare up against you, and he will close the heavens, so that there will be no rain, and the earth will not yield its produce, and you will swiftly perish from the good land which the Lord gives you, Eric. Therefore, it says, place these words of mine upon your heart and upon your soul, and bind them for a sign on your hand, and they shall be for a reminder between your eyes. But one more line. You shall teach them to your children, to speak of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk on the road, when you lie down, and when you rise. And you shall inscribe them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Now, what that means is if you go to a Jewish person's house and you see that little weird thing on the right side of the door at an angle, that's called a mezuzah, you shall inscribe them on the doorposts of your house. A reminder that God is there. And it ends with this. So that your days and the days of your children may be prolonged on the land which the Lord swore to your fathers to give to them for as long as the heavens are above the earth. Now, the reason I'm reading this to you is because it's of interest to me, number one. But number two, some monumental biblical level things are happening on the earth right now under Donald Trump that only the media doesn't see. Only the vermin on the left and the media don't see it.
I'll be right back.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
I find it very interesting that Trump gets 3 hostages released from Korea, and the media spins it into something negative. I couldn't believe the news. They made it sound like the American hostages were held by Donald Trump. To show you how perverted most people in the media are, no matter what the man does, they twist it into something negative. Down there today, there's a CIA nominee, Gina Haspel, an all-around wonderful, great woman, by what I read, asked by this nobody, Kamala Harris, who's trying to make a name for herself, is waterboarding moral? What kind of stupid question is that outside of the facts of the time and the time in which the waterboarding was done? You all know that's a stupid question. That's like saying, did you stop beating your wife? How do you answer a question like that? So this is the best that Democrats can do, is waterboarding moral. No, it's immoral, but it's stop the terrorist attack, schmuck. How's that for an answer? Now take a walk. Go back to working for Willie Brown. Go get him coffee, because you're never going to be anything more than this. Stupid. I'm sick of stupid people pretending they're so smart. I'm sick of it. The lowest class of humanity seems to present themselves like they're the most brilliant people on the earth. Is waterboarding immoral? You hear who's asking the question? Kamala Harris. CIA nominee Gina Haspel said, how about the things you've done in your life? How many of them were immoral, Kamala? That's all. Just answer yes or no. Have you ever done anything immoral, Kamala Harris? Yes or no? You know, I don't understand Republicans. They can't do opposition research and look into the backgrounds of these people. They just did it on Schneiderman. How many months have I been saying that Republicans have to hire investigators to look into the backgrounds of their enemies, the most vocal of their enemies, and bring them down? They just did. Wait until you see what's coming with the media. You wait and see. You wait and see. I can guarantee you, as I sit here, that you're going to see private lives exposed of some of these people in the media. The louder they are, the louder they're going to fall. the ones who sit on high horses and put down Trump, wait till you see the revelations about these people in the media that will come out over the next days and months. You're going to be shocked. I won't be shocked. Should stripper's lawyer be sanctioned and disbarred? You betcha. Do you think lawyers like that dirtbag working for the dirty stripper should be able to come up with a story like this about $500,000 sent to Trump's lawyer Cohen? I mean, that's a lawyer's job, is to smear somebody in the press with NBC News running wild and free and naked with the story and the rest of the new fake news media trotting along with them? How in the world can this country survive when dirtbag lawyers are allowed to get up there and be given credence by the left-wing press? Then there's another story tied to this that I was going to do, because they're going to go from the divine to the momentary. President Donald Trump suggested Wednesday that he might revoke White House credentials for some journalists because of the dramatic leftward tilt in television news coverage about him. And they show how twisted they are. Well, Matt Drudge, the internet publisher behind the Drudge Report website, posted a very rare personal tweet Wednesday morning to warn about what might follow from the White House. And Matt Drudge said, "I fear the future result of Trump's crusade on fake news will be licensing of all reporters," Drudge wrote, noting that Democrats already floated this in the Senate pre-Trump. Well, he's right. And Drudge said the mop-up on this issue is going to be excruciating. Now, this is a very important story because Trump may have stepped into something that he will regret, which is revoking the White House credentials for some journalists. Because the next step for that is licensing reporters. Now, you may say, yeah, license them. Well, what does that actually mean? A government person is going to license a reporter? You can't have that, because today's government won't be tomorrow's government. And while today's government may not license the liars, let's say a Democrat wins in a couple of years. What, then they're not going to license people like me because they don't like me? Then we lose the First Amendment.
Savage.
Everybody's talking at me. I don't hear words they're saying, only the echoes of my mind.
Welcome back to the Savage Nation. Just a little footnote on the dirtbag stripper and her lawyer, Avenatti. I don't think you know his background. His background is in opposition research with Rahm Emanuel for President Barack Obama. So if you want to see whose dirty handprints are all over the stripper story, it's Barack Obama and Rahm Emanuel. As you well know, they've damaged the nation in ways we may never know. 8 years of damage, in my estimation, Obama and Emanuel. This guy worked at a political opposition and media firm, the Research Group, run by Rahm Emanuel. He worked in 150 campaigns in 42 states. In other words, he digs up dirt on candidates and tries to destroy them. And if this is the kind of nation you want to live in, count me out. He has powerful friends at CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, NBC, BBC. That's where his friends are. And they're trying to take an election away from the people, steal an election from the people. That's how I see it. Where this all plays out, I don't know. My suspicion is that there are things going on behind the scenes that are going to shock us, both about the stripper and the lawyer, in the very near future. Things are going to come out where people's breath will stop, and that will be the end of this. And Trump will prevail, and in a few months, his agenda will be 100% back on track, and will be able to take on the world and make America great again, and not be burdened and saddled by the vermin on the left, who have debased America, destroyed America, weakened the family, weakened the church, spit on God, spit on faith, and spit on reason itself. And now the callers. Our lines are open at 855-407-2882. Carla on KLIF in Dallas. Thank you, Carla, for holding so long. What's on your mind?
Dr. Savage, thank you for taking my call. And I just want to go back to a movie called Tombstone. Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday are together, and Doc's getting ready to die. And Wyatt says, "What makes a man like Ringo, Doc? What makes him do the things that he does?" And Doc says, a man like Ringo has got a great big hole in him. He can never kill enough or inflict enough pain to ever fill it. And Wyatt says, well, what does he need? And Doc says, revenge. And Wyatt says, for what? And Doc says, for being born.
So who does that apply to? Who is Ringo in that allegory today? Who's the Ringo?
It's everybody that has this empty hole in them that tries to fill it up with themselves instead of with God. And we're all created with a hole, and God is just welcoming us to come into our lives and fill up that hole. And when
That's very beautiful. That's a very beautiful, Carla. That is a beautiful soliloquy, and you waited a long time to say it on the show today. That's very beautiful, and I thank you for calling from Dallas, Texas. That is a beautiful, beautiful call. I wish it were that simple. I wish we could just break it down on one side of those who are good and believe in God, and the other side of the bad people who don't believe in God. Unfortunately, in my life, I've met a lot in between. I've met people who are atheists who are wonderful people, and I met religious people who are monsters. So this is the problem. My point in explaining the religious people was to have you understand what they do in their rituals and in their prayers, what they're trying to do. 855-400-7282. It's the Savage Nation. Saudis, Iranians, North Koreans, American prisoners. What's going on in the world? Everything and nothing. WABC, New York City. Moses, line 2. Go ahead, please.
Yes. First of all, I want to wish you, as we say in the tradition, a Yasher Kaya.
Okay, listen, please, sir. We've waited a long time to hear your wisdom. What is the subject?
Okay, the subject is this. While I agree with a lot of the things that Rabbi Jeff said and that you said, I'd like to just refine it a little bit. First of all, the best definition I ever heard about religion, I heard at Temple University Graduate School of Comparative Religion. And the quote is this from a teacher, a great teacher: religion is that which mediates between our infinite yearnings and our finite reality. That's a heavy thought, but I think that's what
religion is. That which mediates between our what?
Our infinite yearnings. Only human beings can conceive of the infinite, as far as we know. And our mortal reality, our finitude, our limitations, the fact that we're mortal.
That's an interesting question unto itself. Man has to be almost crazy to get through a day. A man with a higher consciousness who realizes that he's mortal and his life will come to an end at one point has to live as though he's immortal. Or else how can he take a step? What's the point of living if he's going to die one day? How does a religious person deal with that? What is the point of living and breathing and acting on the stage of life if you know you're going to die one day? What is the point of it all?
Well, that's something I struggle with every day. And now that I have had a tragic death happen in my family, it's more and more on my mind. But the other thing I wanted to say...
I can answer it for you because I have the answer to that one. Okay. It's not even a riddle. The answer is to survive at all costs. Make believe you're just an animal at a certain point. And the animal must survive. Let all the others fall by the wayside. You must survive. And you must go to the finish line. And you must fight to the last day of your life in the best way you know how to survive on this earth without harming yourself or others. That's how I see it. It's all about survival. Survival of the fittest within ourselves and survival of the fittest on the planet. So that's what it comes down to. What's the point? The point is there is no point. And if there's no point, keep fighting anyway. Guess we were put here for some reason. Maybe we don't know the reason. Maybe we don't have to know the reason to keep fighting. You know what I'm saying?
Tremendous point. But let me just say this. You mentioned about going... I'm a congregational rabbi. As a matter of fact, Simon and Garfunkel, you played an excerpt of one of their songs. They grew up in the congregation I presently serve, way before my time. Now, you said that a sermon should leave you...
talk about Simon and Garfunkel. I went to junior high school with them. He doesn't believe in anything, Paul Simon. Paul Simon's an atheist, isn't he?
Yeah, I understand that his family...
And he's a left-wing fanatic on top of it all. Lives in mansions all over the world. He's a fanatic who doesn't believe in anything.
Okay, Art Garfunkel finished Hebrew High School, so let's talk...
That's not even there, but let's wrap this up because time is short, Moses. What's your main point?
Okay, my main point is this. When you say that going to synagogue or church or a mosque or a temple that you should leave happy, that I would take issue with. No, what you have to leave is more whole. There are lots of people who come to synagogue who are broken. You can't make them happy, but you can give them some hope. You can give them...
Well, I actually didn't say leave happy. I said you should leave stronger.
Okay, then I agree with that. As a matter of fact...
In other words, there's no point to religion if it de-innervates you. You should leave a house of worship feeling stronger, not weaker. And if the minister or the pastor or the rabbi makes you feel bad, don't go back there. Thank you for the call. That's all. That's my opinion on it. You want to come out invigorated, full of life, not full of sadness. Not full of sadness. Now, we have some sound I haven't played yet on the Savage Nation. Let's get to some of that. And let's start with all of the liberals in New York who are horrified about Schneiderman's degeneracy. Alleged degeneracy, I should say. Because we don't know if those 4 women who gave their story to the New Yorker are telling the truth. We have to believe that he's innocent until proven guilty. By mere fact that he resigned within 1 day tells us something, but I don't know what it says. Maybe the poor man was horrified by the attacks upon him and he's innocent. But here's de Blasio, who makes believe he's horrified over Schneiderman. Listen to 01.
I was horrified. Page after page, it got worse and worse and worse. And it was horrifying. And it was disgusting. And it was unacceptable in every way. The only thing that bore any truth from the Attorney General was the statement he had made in the past about this being a moment of reckoning in our country. That's still true. It's a moment of reckoning, and now the reckoning has come to him. We have to, in this moment in history, once and for all, affirm the notion that anyone who has been victimized can speak up, should speak up, will be supported and believed when they speak up.
All right, I'm going to say something, Mr. de Blasio, that's going to be heard around the world. Here it is. Anyone who's been victimized? Do you know anyone who hasn't been victimized? Have you met anyone in your life who's not been victimized at some point in their life? I haven't met anyone yet who's not been victimized. What kind of stupid statement is that? Anyone who's been victimized should speak up. I'll start to speak up. I'm a political minority in San Francisco. I am victimized every day by being ignored by the local newspaper. Should I sue them? I'm thinking about it. How's that? Wouldn't that be a novel lawsuit? Michael Savage says he's a political minority in San Francisco. And although he has written one best-selling book after another, they refuse to recognize him as an author or a broadcaster, even though he has gone farther than anyone in the history of broadcasting in the San Francisco area. And since the newspaper has no competition, it's a monopoly. And as a monopoly, it must be fair. And since it's not being fair to him as a political minority, he is going to sue the San Francisco Chronicle. How's that? Because I'm being victimized by them as a political minority. Now, you never heard that before. But I thought about it last night, and I thought maybe that would make for a novel lawsuit. And I wonder if Dan Horowitz would be interested in suing the San Francisco Chronicle for not reporting on what I've achieved as a political minority. You've got idiots here who are minorities in one way or another, who do the merest symbolism of, the merest semblance, rather, of something, and they're glorified as something great. Well, there are those of us who actually have achieved greatness, and we're being marginalized by not being reported upon. And if you're the newspaper of record in the area, and you refuse to acknowledge a political minority like myself, then we're going to go to the courts and let the courts decide. What do you think about that as a person's been victimized, Mr. de Blasio? Is that a possibility, that a conservative in a liberal city is a political minority who's victimized? How about that one? Tell Doug to take this MP3 and send it to Dan Horowitz, Jim. And we're going to see if he'll take the case. If not, I'll get someone who will. I think I'll have a little fun with this one. We'll take it first to the Ninth Circuit Court of Schlemiels. I'm sure it'll go there. Then we'll have to go to the Supreme Court, which we now own. Rigoletto. So everything's changed. Remember that guy? Billy Crystal or one of them looked up and said, now it's our Air Force. Remember that? You remember when the Democrats won and they looked up and the Air Force was flying overhead? And one of the left-wing comedians looked up and said, now it's our Air Force. Well, boys, what goes around comes around. Now it's our Supreme Court. Put that into your bung pipe and smoke it over at the Chronicle, because I just may seek my revenge. If you think you're going to treat me like in the Soviet Union, you're mistaken. You may just find out that you're not God Almighty over at that newspaper. And yes, I do want exposure. Yes, I want all of my fans to see reflected in the newspaper in San Francisco what I have achieved, what reflects their values, not the sickness and degeneracy that you hold up as models for this area in Nancy Pelosi's backyard. Now let's go to the callers. Charlene on the stream. I like stream. Charlene, what's on your mind?
Hi, Dr. Savage. I wanted to chime in on the conversation about faith. I have a deep faith and gratitude toward Jesus. My family has been affected by mental illness. I have 2 close family members who had serious psychosis. And the healing that has happened, and again, it's not just through faith. It was a combination of great psychiatrists, counselors, but it's basically been a 3-year journey that we've been on.
But what does religion do for you? What do you feel when you think that Jesus loves you? Tell me what you feel.
Peace. He actually gave me a vision of being in the hospital room with my loved one who was in the ICU because of things that happened due to the symptoms of the illness. And he showed me that we were sitting at the bed together with our...
But wait, is Jesus an entity? Do you actually see an entity when you say Jesus? Do you see a person?
This was in the context, there's... it's called Restoring the Foundations. It's a healing process that was guided by clergy. That was done personally with my family member and I. And
I don't want to be disrespectful to your pain or your recovery from that pain, because the time on a radio show is quite limited. What is your final point on this subject of faith?
My final point is that mental illness and any kind of illness, you can find peace and joy in the midst of the chaos by turning to the Word, turning to God.
Well, you're preaching to the converted, because that's what I've been talking about all day long. I was saying that in my own way, I have found that to be true. It's my belief in God and my contact with God that saved me many years ago. And I thank you for resonating with that thought on the Savage Nation. Hold on. Please send that young lady a copy of God, Faith, and Reason. I think the book was written for her. I think she'll love it. We are so short of time. It's 49 minutes after the hour. You're listening to Savage Nation. We have time for a few more calls, latest news, and sound bites right here on the Savage Nation.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
Well, there's only a minute left of this remarkable day of broadcasting history on the Savage Nation. It's a wonderful day on the program. I hope you've enjoyed what you heard so far. I'm looking at the pictures I have on the photo section of michaelsavage.com. I never look at it. I don't have the time. And many of these pictures were taken by me over the last few years. They're really beautiful. And if you like photography, it's one of my hobbies. There are some pictures I never exhibited before that are on michaelsavage.com. Me with the president, you've seen. Me with the vice president, you've seen. But you haven't seen the National Cathedral with the cherry blossom trees in bloom. You haven't seen a picture of me in front of the copy of the U.S. Constitution in the State Department. You haven't seen some of the pictures of me on the steps of Congress pointing with an umbrella, where a congressman was shot by a newspaper man who was in a slander suit with him. That's right, the blood is still on the steps. All there on michaelsavage.com.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.